incredible. Sarah Pochin's here, Reform UK's MP for Runcorn and Helsby. Sarah, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, good to see you. This is an appalling situation. People are calling it possibly the worst cover-up in British history. I think it might be that. I'm staggered just to hear Baroness Casey there saying so casually that somebody Tipexed out the word Pakistani. I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it?
I was debating on Sunday with a Northwest Labour MP, and I was challenging him to use the word Pakistani. You know, and he was saying to me, "Why do you keep accusing, it being predominantly Pakistani men?" I said, "Because it is." Yeah. You know, and it's only people like me that are brave enough to stand up, and the other Reform MPs brave enough to stand up and say, you know, wake up and smell the coffee. Yeah. This is certainly historically. It's been very much a Pakistani grooming gang issue. Now, we know it's still going on, but more worrying in this report by Baroness Casey is the fact that she's now talking about, you know, asylum seekers also going down this, you know, heinous route of abuse of our children. Yeah. As you know, Mike, it's a big topic for me in my constituency of Runcorn and Helsby. We're housing a lot of illegal immigrants, and it's a hotbed of crime, and this is not going away. This is a current issue.
Yeah, of course. Well, when you were here in the studio a few weeks back, you told me about stories of young girls seemingly being dropped off in taxis, being picked up at all sorts of strange times of the day and night. You know, what looks on the face of it to be an active kind of grooming gang scenario.
I've got situations where people have told me that their daughters have been out just, you know, walking and have been approached by asylum seekers asking if they'd like to come and earn some money. So this is the start of it all. I know that there's an ongoing rape case in broad daylight of by 2 asylum seekers that have been arrested for that in my constituency, Mike. This is still happening everywhere. The biggest issue about this is that the Conservative government for 14 years were absolutely complicit in allowing this to happen, in allowing the cover-ups. And the Labour government, as we know, Keir Starmer only in January calling people like me with my views far right. Yeah. And he's been forced to U-turn because of the public outrage, excuse me, on this issue. And the public, without this inquiry now, will not let this rest. And this inquiry has to be timely, and it has to call the people that have let this happen to account. Because if we don't, the lives that have been ruined by the establishment ignoring this problem, sweeping it under the carpet, will have been wasted. Those lives that have been ruined, these poor children that have been subject to this horrendous rape and abuse, it'll have been for nothing if we can't save the ones that are now live, you know, these now live investigations. Yeah. And it's only going to get worse with the people, I'm sorry to say it, coming in on these small boats. You know, it's just this weather that we've got now. God knows how many hundreds are coming across.
Well, there are pictures in the Daily Mail today of scenes the like of which I've not seen before just off the coast of France, of you know, dozens of men in sort of up to their waist in water, clambering onto dinghies. You know, they're coming over. We had 1,400 come over, I think, at the last count of the weekend. There'll be at least another couple of thousand. I mean, I've said this before. It's entirely feasible, but by the time we get to July 4th, the anniversary of Labour being in government for 1 year, it'll be 50,000 people that have come.
And let's face it, that Labour MP, can't think of his name, that's how relevant they are, but that Labour MP was arguing that it was women and children.
Oh, that was Darren Jones, yeah.
Thank you. How ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, what are the public really going to buy that kind of stuff? We can see the pictures. Yeah. In the papers. Well, let's
give him the good grace to have another outing on that one, because I think people need to be reminded. This guy is quite an important figure in the Treasury. He's almost second in command to Rachel Reeves. Here's Darren Jones on the small boats.
And when you see that the majority of the people in these boats are children, babies and women who have been...
No, they're not.
I mean, even the audience were disagreeing with him. I mean, this guy couldn't get it more wrong. But in the Express this morning, Sammy Woodhouse, one of the victims, who's quite outspoken about all of it, is demanding that Keir Starmer resigns. I've just had Katie Lamb on, the Shadow Home Office Minister from the Tory party, who said that the Prime Minister has got an awful lot of questions to answer, not just for what his attitude was in January to this whole situation, but what he was doing when he was head of the Crown Prosecution Service.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Of course, we know he won't resign, but because he's not honourable enough, and they're still denying this is an issue, but he should do. There's 2 points that I'd like to mention. First of all, Lee Anderson yesterday in Parliament raised the question to the Home Secretary that Maggie Oliver should be, if not leading this investigation, should at least be included in this and be part of that investigation. She resigned in 2012, I think it was, and these issues are still going on and haven't been tackled. What an absolute disgrace. So she should be involved in this, and I know that she would be up for that. And the other point I want to make is there's been an absolute systemic failure to collect data on these, on who these perpetrators are. They haven't been recorded, as you've said, as Pakistani. It's been it Tipexed out. It's absolutely shocking what has gone on by both parties, Conservative and Labour, and police need to be held to account, social workers need to be held to account, counsellors need to be held to account, these children's homes need to be held to account. I know my experience as a borough councillor. I went into children's homes. I was told, oh, well, we can't control them coming and going at night, so we just let them go out, and knowing that they were being abused. Mike, what kind of society are we living in when we're saying a children's home, well, we know isn't safe, but how awful that this is happening. It's been going on for years, and nobody is brave enough to stand up, apart from people like myself, and saying, people like Maggie Oliver, of course, but, we need real people on these committees. And how sad is it that it's taken Baroness Casey to do this report, to actually call out the Pakistani element, to call out the systemic lack of information cover-ups that's gone on, for Keir Starmer to U-turn again and say, OK, then I'm going to have to, agree to an investigation. But what's the time on it? What's the time on it? That's the other thing.
Well, exactly right. And I mean, lots of people have got sort of ideas about how that should be done and who should be appointed to run it and all of that. But my other question, which very few people are actually asking about, is how is it possible that you would worry about cohesion of a community by going into that community and arresting people committing the most vile, ghastly, horrible crimes against children? Who in that community is going to stand up for these scumbags? I mean, look at them there. Are you seriously going to tell me that Labour were worried that other members of their community would be upset if they were arrested? Because why would they be? I mean, I said this to Peter Blexley this morning. If somebody came to my street and started arresting a criminal gang that was living there and robbing everybody's cars and houses and all the rest of it, I wouldn't be standing up for the people that were doing the robbing. I'd be going to the police, in you come, take them away.
These men are misogynistic, women haters. They see white Western girls as trash, as something there to abuse. Now, this, in my opinion, is hate crime. Now, why is it that people like me are called out for having far-right views when we want to get these vile individuals off the streets, and yet they clearly are considering white Western women and girls as fair game for this rape, this abuse, and yet that's not a hate crime. They're not doing. Well, I don't know whether they're doing it to their own, but the point is, it's clearly a hate crime against white Western females.
Well, it's certainly a racially aggravated crime, isn't it? If you were a prosecutor, you would call for further and worse punishment because of that.
And I know from my 20 years as a magistrate, anything racially aggravated is that the sentence is vastly increased. None of that is happening. Let's face it, they're only just being brought to court, let alone having longer sentences. Oh, and by the way, of course, this Labour government is reducing the sentence served now to a third anyway. So these people, even if they're put into prison, will be back out on the streets.
I mean, we've got a guy who was actually in prison for 77 years. He's in the Mail today. He was let out of prison years and years ago, and he should have been deported, but he hasn't been. And of course, he hasn't been deported because he gave up his Pakistani citizenship, so he hasn't got anywhere to go. Again, yesterday, Yvette Cooper said, we will do everything in our power to deport these people, which means they won't deport them.
They won't deport them because until, as we know, we come out of the European Court of Human Rights, that's not going to happen because they'll keep claiming that, you know, the English chicken nuggets are nicer than Pakistani chicken nuggets or whatever the nonsense is. And we look and we're a laughing stock when it comes to our judges allowing and agreeing to that sort of nonsense. The British people will. This is why reform has such support, because the British people have had enough. And I keep saying enough is enough. They want someone now to say, we're going to stand up for ourselves. We're not putting up with this anymore. These people have to be deported. They have to be removed from the country. Personally, I wouldn't put them in our prisons because that costs the taxpayer a fortune. £55,000 a year per person in prison. They need to be deported out and placed into the Pakistani prisons or whatever they want to do with them. But they need to be moved out of this country. And I would remove their British citizenship.
Yeah, absolutely right. And thanks, but no thanks, you know, they get lost. One final thing, it's slightly off the topic here because I know we're very much focused on this terrible report, but story in the Telegraph today, Keir Starmer's done this new deal with the European Union in which they now have some say over our food manufacturing standards. Apparently, crispy bacon crisps are now no longer going to be able to be exported to the EU until they change the bleeding recipe. How ridiculous is that?
Oh my goodness, this closer alignment with the EU that Keir Starmer is desperate to achieve is just going to drag all this nonsense back up again. You know, was it something about we couldn't have wobbly carrots at one point? Yeah. You know, and now they can't have our bacon crisps. Well, you know what? We're quite happy in this country to eat our wobbly carrots and have bacon and keep our bacon crisps. What a load of absolute nonsense. He's betraying, on a more serious point, he is betraying the Brexit vote. We know that neither the Tories or this Labour government have any intention to maximise the benefits of that Brexit vote to carry out the will of the British people. Worse than that, Keir Starmer is heading back into Europe and aligning us closer with Europe. And yet, interestingly, when I called him out on that in PMQs about aligning us with some of the safety issues that Europe are undertaking, like banning the burqa, what did he do? Refused to even answer that question. So he's quite happy to go along with bacon crisps, but he won't debate in Parliament serious issues of public safety.
No, exactly right. Great to see you, Sarah. Thank you very much indeed. Sarah Pochin there, former UK MP for Runcorn Helsby.